Hey, it's another episode of SedgeTool, and guess what we're doing? We're hanging out. We got C on the camera, Big D here, and we're teaching some woodworking to Big D because he's got a lot of questions about certain setups. Now, the other beauty of SedgeTool, it's about a little bit about me getting back to my roots of woodworking and also getting my shop set up a little bit better. I've been kind of out of here for about 13 years, just coming out and doing some stuff, but it's going to be year-round now. So one of the things I was doing yesterday, and I said, you know what? D had a couple of questions on my setup, so I'll let him ask me the question.
So yeah, we're gonna do some crosscuts today, and we have big board here. So with a little shop setup, what's the best way to kind of work with something this big and support it?
Okay, it doesn't matter how big your shop is. This is shop, as I call it, 101. It's setting up. We're setting up in a garage. I have a 3-saw garage here. You caught that?
3-stall.
3-saw garage. Okay. And it's one of the reasons I purchased this house is because I knew someday I'd like to have a really nice shop. And Mary Ann, who's my wife, was pretty cool about it. She says, I'll never park in there. And I said, absolutely not. So as we go through this, I remember my cabinet shop in Fort Lauderdale. Mike Zeisler and myself, we had a cabinet shop. And when we were setting up our Unisaw and our 66 and building out our table, we had a bunch of cheetah tables. And it's about maneuvering material. Our lumber racks were behind us. And we would slide stuff down, but we'd have a cheetah table. Here's the key. Everything was built at the same height. So if you're building a shop, build it to the same height of what you're going to use a lot of the time, like your workbench. Like this is the MFT, okay, MFT3. It's the right height, but what's really cool about it is that height. I have this Veritas workbench. Guess what? It's basically the same height, okay? I built this cabinet over here. Chris, get this. I built this cabinet, which we're going to finish because I got to do the drawer fronts on here. It's the same height, or roughly the same height. But it also acts as an outfeed table, and I wanted just a little drop off of my table saw for support. Okay? That way there, it's safety. The board doesn't go flopping around. But this height, if we look, is basically the same height of my new addition in the shop. And this is about the most amazing support table, work center, and sawing center. This is where I ripped all these pieces yesterday. Okay, but the beauty of it is, check this out. Okay, we have perfect support when we're doing our repetitive cuts on the multifunction table, and you'll see more of that. I built this workbench over here recently. Okay, that's pretty much where we're gonna do a lot of sharpening. And I've always wanted a sharpening center or designated sharpening center, but look at this, guys. It's the same height as the MFT. That's how you build everything, or close to it. It'll give us a little bit of support. If we come in here and catch this, it's a little bit of an offset. That's okay. I could put another board of that thickness in there to support it. So if it's not perfect, just put some more support material under there, even a wedge, to make sure it stays in the same plane. But look at this, same height all the way across. So you'll see how this all works out in a few minutes.
Awesome.
Okay, so there you go. So the first thing you gotta do, we've ripped these perfectly, okay? Yesterday I did. We need to cross-cut them perfectly. So you know in woodworking, you gotta remember this, rule of thumb, everything works off of 90. Okay, so this piece that we just ripped, like on any table saw, but I use the parallel guides for these, okay, on it, and the track saw, anything that you get has to be perfectly ripped. A 4x8 piece of plywood does not come in perfectly 90. But boy, I don't want to go in 90 a 4x8. That's ridiculous because you're going to rip it down into your segments of the width of your upper and lower cabinets, right?
Right.
So I'm doing these at 400. I'm making a specialty cabinet for a really cool product. And what I want to do is I need to get 90 first here.
Okay.
And everything, remember, everything works off of 90. Okay, but we got to make sure, because we use the parallel guides with the track saw, I know this is perfectly 400 millimeters wide. And every piece I have over here is 400 millimeters wide. but we got to get 90s. And what we're going to do is we're going to make some pieces and parts today, where and we'll edge band it afterwards. But we're going to make them so they're 1,000 millimeters tall and 500 millimeters tall. You'll understand all of this as we go. All aluminum extrusion, you probably know this, and maybe you don't. All aluminum extrusion is extruded perfectly parallel. So if we look at the rail here, and you look at the fence here, they're perfectly parallel. What we want is to get a perfect 90 out here. So what you want to do is you want to get a really good square. You want to make sure your square is square. Maybe in a future episode I can show you how to check a square for square. There's probably 1,000 videos on it. But you want a tall leg on one of them. And as you bring it in, you can look at this, and someone might say, wow, we get maybe a little shadow in here. That looks like a consistent line, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so D, I'll tell you right now, as I get older, these eyes keep fading on me. So I saw somebody do this one time, and it kind of blew me away, and I went, now that's smart. Okay, if I take this, and what I always do is I always take myself out. Here's your rail clamp. I loosen it up here, and I make sure I'm at 0, okay? Because this is a spring-loaded pin, so you want to make sure we didn't bump into this.
Right.
Okay, and then I take Post-it notes, and I put one in here, and I put one in here. Okay, now you're going to see where this one's tight and this one's loose. That may have been okay for a lot of people. Sure. For us today, I want to go the extra mile to make sure it's perfect.
Dead nuts accurate.
Yeah, that's it. So what you want to do is, I thought I had it here. I probably got a 5mm hex key kicking around somewhere. I only got 100 of them. Ah, here's one right here. Nope, got it right here. Actually, you know where it is? Right by my hand. Go figure. So what you want to do is, we have these 2 5mm screws on here. Let me just knock the slop out of them, okay, like this. So you're going to see where I can take this now. Let me just set that there. And you're going to see the play I have in 0. So what you do is you take it in, always holding it by this leg. You check it here and here. And then the only thing you do is, I always come over here to the fence clamp. I lock it in. Okay, because everybody thinks that's what you adjust it with. It isn't. It's these 2 5mm screws. There you go. There you go. Wow. It's perfect. Okay, make sure that that pin is in there, and you just tighten it up. Align your cursor to your eye. And now what's going to happen is, when we put this board up against this fence, slide it in, we'll get that perfect 90. Okay? Awesome. So there you go. Let's get cutting. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start cross-cutting. Remember I said everything's off of 90. Yep. So what I do is I always put an arrow to the fence, because I know that's where it's going to bump up to every time when we start flipping this around to get our multiple cuts. The other thing is, we need to get a 90 on here, but we got to set our rail on here. Now, we have it supported over there. Okay, I even put a shim stock in it, but look, you're always going to have that bounciness in that board. Okay, it's okay. Once the rail goes down on it, you lose that. So you're going to get a perfect cut at 90 this way. Okay, I just always double check to make sure that that's locked in. But then come down here so you can see this. See this pin? This pin here goes right up in there, and I always push down, and then I lock it down right here. See that? Now there's a lot of times I've seen over the years where people don't put that pin in, and this thing is wobbling all over. So you have to verify everything. Okay. With the MFT, I always have a couple on the fence. We will utilize these, you'll see in just a minute, when we get our repetitive cuts. But first you got to get that 90. I can't stress that enough. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to set this up. I always verify to knock out the tension on the saw, and then I'm just going to make a cut. I set the depth earlier. We'll go through that maybe someday again. Always start at full speed. Okay, now you can hold it here if you want. I like to put my hand here on the deck. I'm going to plunge and make the cut. And then when you finish the cut, see that? That's the center of my blade, that hump. I always make sure I'm all the way through, but I maintain those cams on the rail, and I bring it up full speed and stop. And there's a variety of reasons for that, but I can go into that also later. Okay, so there you go. Now, you always do this. Mark where you cut 90. Okay? And we'll verify that 90 in a minute. I know we can trust everything, but I'll tell you what. to this day, when I first start cutting here, because I don't know if I bumped into it or whatever, or Chris came in and messed with something just to mess with us. Okay, always check that first square. And as we cut our pieces today, we'll periodically check square.
Sure.
But I've never cut as accurate in my life than working with a multifunction table. Because if we come in here, Chris, if you can see this, you'll see how perfect this is. There's no daylight. Okay, all the way in. That's perfectly square. So if you start perfect, you end up perfect. But I'll show you the other ways of cross-cutting or other tips and tricks of cross-cutting, especially utilizing these, because we have to set those up once and we're good to go. And that's it. And there was a big bear always saying these really cool motivational things. And a plugger knows that a 3-car garage is actually a 3-saw garage. But it was so inspirational. I used to just open up the paper every day just to see pluggers. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to be making a couple of cabinets. We're going to cross-cut a boatload of pieces. Okay, so we have them available.
Right.
Now, there's going to be 2 heights, 1,000 millimeters high and 500 millimeters.
Okay.
But the critical part is our tops and bottoms for it, because you remember, the top and bottom always goes in between the sides. That way there you have shear strength,
yeah.
okay? So we're going to be working with 418 millimeters and 530 millimeters. Okay, so let's cut a bunch of parts. Now, we got our 90 on here.
We do, and it's marked.
It's marked. Woo! Hey, Mo! Okay, so what we got to do is we got to take this, and this is why I like this system, because I could take this. You just got to be careful now of the garage and that opener, hopefully someday. But look, see how I have support on the STM? And it's nice and sturdy. So, the other thing I want to show you is this. Let's do some 1,000 parts.
Okay.
Okay? When you measure this, and I have a tape measure here, okay? The one thing I hate, oh God, I shouldn't say this. The one thing I dislike about tape measures is this. And you have to have that little play in that hook. Do you know why?
Why?
Because this little play will allow you to catch outside measurements, but that little play lets you get inside measurements.
Oh,
So
okay.
sometimes you have to bend this to calibrate it. But what I'm going to do is I want to show you can mark it here at 1,000 millimeters. See that? Okay, good. What I like to do, because some people call me an old guy, was I always like using folding rules, because I think I told you before while we were working, these are the best feeler gauges I got at my fingertips. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I always use a folding rule for accuracy, and I'm going to come out here, and I usually have a pencil like this, a fine tip pencil. I love working with 9mm. Okay, so check this out. Look, see this? I am feeling that edge just right there. I know that's right. I hold it here, and right here at 1,000 millimeters is actually 1 millimeter. So what I always do is I always put a point, because I know that's exactly the point of my line at 1,000 millimeters. That way there, once I have that, I've measured from my accurate point, I could take that down, and I could take this and lie it right down on my line. Just like that. And come in here, Chris, so you can see this and see how I'm splitting it. I'm up against the fence, and I'm going to bring it right in there. Okay? Cool. Now, the most important part of this, okay, is if you need that super accuracy, you got it. Now, if that was a hair over 1,000 millimeters, who cares? Just as long as they're all the same. Okay? See that? I lock it in. Now, I'm going to cut probably 2 pieces out of this piece for that first cabinet.
Okay.
Okay? But I don't have to remeasure it. Follow?
Right, because it's locked in.
Exactly. So I'm going to have you cut this one.
Okay.
Okay, so remember I told you where you see that arrow, that goes toward the fence. We have it measured. We have our stop set up. So Big D is going to make the cut. I'm going to take it down. Big D, make sure that stop's on there.
Got it.
What I always check to make sure we're up against the fence. Okay, make sure you tighten that up. Because sometimes all this weight in here, if I hit that, it'll just budge a little, so I always crank it just to make sure. I'm going to set that down, and I think, Big D, I think you're ready to rock and roll. Let's make that first cut. We'll take a quick measurement. Look how this is completely supported, everybody. It's really nice. Now, if you get good, you can do it on 1 foot. No, I'm just kidding. You don't have to look at the blade. Just get as comfortable as you want. Okay, there you go. Plunge. Go forward. Bring it up full speed. Now let's do this. Let's just move this off. I just grabbed my magnifying glass. Let's lift this up and let's look at it. Now this is the beauty of the track saw, the multifunction table, and this guide rail. It's this splinter guide right here. Check this out, everybody. You do not, I repeat, do not see any tear out. That's a perfect, in fact, Big D, this is the best cut I've ever seen in my life. Woo! Woohoo! Pretty awesome? Okay.
Amazing.
Okay, so there you go. Now you have a perfect cabinet part. And you know what I'm gonna do? Let's just leave it here. Let's just see that measurement to see if my eye was dead on. Chris, come in here.
Coming for the reveal.
Check this out, baby. Look at that. Dead on 1,000.
Hold on.
Look at that. Dead on 1,000.
Wow.
Okay, maybe it's 1,000.5, but who cares? Guess what? Every one of them is gonna be the same because of this repeatable stop.
It's awesome.
And that's amazing, okay? And we know it's square. So let's cut another one. And it's basically, from here on out, it's basically what? It's a production line, okay? And you're just taking the saw to the material and getting a perfect splinter-free cut. Let's do it. This shouldn't fall off, but what I'll do is I'll just take my STM and I'll bring it right under here, just like this. There you go. Go for it. Let's make the cut. I always do this, D, is go ahead and take that off and set it right over here. I always do this. I know we can visually see that this is 1,000 millimeters, but I always go like this, okay?
Oh, okay.
Or if you're getting used to metric, that's 1 meter. Got it?
Gotcha.
Cool. 1,000 millimeters is a meter. Cool? Perfect. There you go. That's how you crosscut and get repetitive crosscuts. And let's just take it like this, bring it up. You'll see they're absolutely perfect end to end. Huh?
Yeah.
Check, use that feeler gauge of yours.
Oh yeah.
Those fingertips. Watch out for
flush.
Looks pretty awesome, huh?
Yep.
There you go. All right, let's get cutting. See how Derek's got 4 fingers in the tote? That's the tote of a saw, okay? He's got his thumb up here, okay? I use this saw or any saw like this. Put your index finger up here. See how it's pointing? Mm-hmm. It's gonna be a little more comfortable because this, believe it or not, puts you in line, okay? And you get behind the saw and this will point in the right direction. Believe it or not, it gets a lot more comfortable, especially if you're using it left hand. Go ahead and start it again. Okay. Perfect. So look, you got a big hand like I do. Mm-hmm. Okay, you got a lot longer hand than I do. So I used to get really uncomfortable going like this, and I says, wait a minute, I use a hand saw like this, a panel saw or a dovetail saw. In other words, that's the right way to hold a hand saw or a track saw. Same way I use a K-Pex. I use it the same way. My index finger's pointing forward, boom, release, and it's easy. It helps you stay in line. Okay. And remember, it's all about getting comfortable or making sure you're comfortable with a power tool. And that's any power tool. If you feel uncomfortable or awkward or you find yourself reaching too much, kind of stop and rethink of what you're doing. Okay, so let me just step in here so you can see this, okay? Remember I told you get behind the saw?
Yep.
Okay, and I started for a few minutes. I didn't want to stop you, but I saw you start to reach. Okay, do you know what you do in a situation like that? You move closer. Follow me? It's there's a lot of people thinking you just pop open a table saw or a jointer or a track saw out of the box or the sustainer, but there's a lot of technique in using it, and that's why I think this is a really cool thing we're doing. So I can really, I don't want to say hold your hand, but bring you up to speed on using a lot of power tools. Okay, so D, when you're using a square and you're checking for square, sometimes you could take it like this and stuff. What I was taught, my buddy Ralph taught me, is this. You just take your square, make sure it's a really good square, and you check, you just lay it on there where you're checking 90, and you look in here, and always put a light behind it. And if you don't see any light, you got it. Because sometimes you inadvertently do this. You lift it here, you do something like this, you don't know. You got to make sure the corner's clean, and you just check to see if there's daylight. And I'm going to tell you right now, and you let the weight of the square go on there, and you'll see, hopefully the video's catching this, Chris, that's a perfect cut. Okay, so this is a piece of scrap plywood I've had around that I ripped down at 400 millimeters yesterday. And I want to go through this because I always, when I take a piece that's not truly a full length of plywood, but I need to maximize the plywood. Okay, I mean, this is common sense. But there's sometimes I'm just like, oh man, I should have cut this length and then this length, okay. Or I want to get as much material out of this piece. Is what I'm trying to get at. The beauty of this is we have a stop here at 1,000, and we have a stop at 400. And what was that? 418 millimeters. So what I'll do is I'll just do a rough calculation and go, oh look, I can get 1,000 out of here, and then of course I'm going to get another 418. So what I want to do also is I want to lose this. So that's where I'm going to put that 90 on there. Okay. Or should I say, you're going to put that 90 on there. Okay, so let's get our 90, and remember our max. This goes up against the fence. Let's do that. And that's all this is, everybody. It's just, let's bring it out just a hair. Okay, good. Now you're ready? Let's make that cut. It's repetitive now. Okay? This isn't rocket science. It's just understanding the basics of things. And not to be too repetitive, which I am in my head. I'm always thinking of 90, where my witness marks are. I make things bold so I know I don't forget. This is easy. We're building boxes, but you got to know the process of this. Right. Okay? And we will get into our cabinet series of building. I'll step through a bunch. I have 1,000 ideas for cabinets that we'll do. Okay? But in the end, it's all a bunch of boxes.
All just boxes.
All just boxes. Let's do it. So I'll do this with you. One thing you want to do, that's a what, 1,000?
Yep. Right?
Let's get that out of there. Okay, perfect. You know that's exactly 1,000. Okay, but guess what you're going to do now? You got this piece right here. Hit that down. Nope. Yep. Bring that down. Guess what? Now you get your 418.
And then we still have the 90 because we've referenced the 90 in the last cut. All right.
The man, the myth, the modern day legend, baby. Big D! Let's do it.
I'm learning.
Yeah, now you're talking.
A little at a time.
Little at a time. I'm coaching. Okay, so one of the things I want to make sure you understood about today's project or exercise is cross-cutting to get the perfect 90, okay? Make sure you have a good square, make sure you're measuring, make sure you're double checking anything. Now, you gotta have the right tools, but the best tool, I think, and this is what we're trying to do with SedgeTool, is understanding truly the best tool in that shop is knowledge. Okay, I always want to tell people, if you have some knowledge that you need to pass on to somebody, make sure you do it, because that is the most important thing. Now, we joke around, what a tool, right? But I've been called a tool my whole life, but seriously, sometimes you don't know what you know. Like, you've taught me so much about social media and your background and tech and stuff. Pass it on, okay? So I always say this, stay positive and be sharp.